The flashing red and blue of police lights shattered the stillness of our quiet suburban afternoon, washing over manicured lawns and white picket fences like a warning beacon. From my office, I watched the feed of our security cameras as two officers rushed through Willowbrook Estate's wrought iron gates, their expressions sharp with urgency. And there, front and center on my doorstep, stood Karen Whitfield, our HOA president. She was red-faced and shrieking, brandishing a key in the air as if it were a sword of authority. Though its power had failed her, she pounded on my locked door with the kind of fury reserved for tyrants denied their way. Inside, my 12-year-old son, Leo, sat calmly with his phone raised, recording the entire spectacle with the steady patience of someone who knew the truth was on his side. What Karen didn't realize was that in mere minutes, she'd be the one under police scrutiny. Not me. My name is Marcus Chun. I'm a single father and a software engineer, and 3 months earlier, Leo and I had moved into Willowbrook Estates, a neighborhood that seemed like a dream at first glance. The lawns were immaculate. The community pool sparkled under the summer sun, and the schools boasted glowing ratings. It felt safe, structured, and promising. What I hadn't accounted for was Karen Whitfield, a woman who viewed her HOA presidency not as a volunteer role, but as a throne. From day one, she ruled the neighborhood like her own petty kingdom. Her obsession began almost immediately. The first time she saw Leo walking home from the bus stop on his own, she intercepted me in our driveway. With a smile that barely masked condescension, she suggested I consider after-school care, implying, with great emphasis, that single parents often struggle with proper supervision. I explained politely but firmly that Leo was 12, fully capable of spending 2 hours home alone, and that I work remotely with the ability to monitor him through our security system. That should have ended the matter. But Karen didn't seem to understand the meaning of no. Soon, she began inventing rules that didn't exist. She claimed HOA bylaws prohibited children under 16 from being unsupervised at home. When I asked to see these bylaws, she said they were under revision and I'd receive an updated copy soon. Unsurprisingly, nothing ever arrived. Her behavior grew more unsettling. Each afternoon, Karen would patrol the neighborhood in her silver SUV, timing her passes to coincide with the school bus. She slowed as she approached our house, sometimes even idling at the curb to watch Leo walk inside. It got to the point where Leo asked me why the mean lady kept watching him. His unease was obvious, and mine only grew sharper. The breaking point came on a crisp Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in the middle of a high-stakes video conference with clients in Japan when my phone buzzed with urgent alerts from our smart home system. Someone was tampering with our front door. The live feed revealed Karen, her face twisted in frustration, jamming a key into our lock again and again. Through the speaker system, I heard her shrill voice commanding Leo to open the door immediately. She insisted she held an HOA master key and was conducting a welfare check. My blood went cold. Leo, bless him, didn't panic. Instead, he followed the safety protocol we practiced. He pressed the panic button, locking all entry points and triggering full recording on every camera. Then he called me directly, his young voice steady. "Dad, that Karen lady is trying to get in the house. She says she has a master key, but it's not working. You did exactly the right thing. I told him. Stay put. I'll handle this." Through the speaker, I warned Karen she was trespassing and needed to leave immediately. Instead of retreating, her face flushed a deeper crimson. She yanked out her phone and, to my disbelief, dialed 911. Her tone turned frantic and theatrical as she told the dispatcher there was a child abandoned, possibly injured, inside my house. She claimed she was the HOA president conducting an authorized welfare check and that the child's parent was negligent. I immediately placed my own call to 911, calmly explaining the real situation. An unauthorized individual was attempting to break into my home while my son was perfectly safe inside. The dispatcher assured me officers were already on their way. I ended my client meeting mid-sentence and drove home, my hands tight on the steering wheel, fury and worry battling in my chest. By the time I pulled into the driveway, 2 cruisers were already there, lights still flashing. Officers Martinez and Thompson stood on the porch, their skepticism apparent as Karen continued her tirade about HOA authority and child welfare. Leo, still inside, had followed my instructions perfectly through the video doorbell. He assured the officers he was fine, sitting at the table doing his homework. His calm, measured responses stood in stark contrast to Karen's increasingly hysterical claims. When I walked up the path, Karen seized her chance for theatrics, pointing at me dramatically. "That's him," she screeched. "That's the negligent father who abandons his child and refuses safety checks." Officer Martinez gave me a look, measured, patient, but with a glimmer that told me he wasn't buying her story. He asked me to explain my side. I took out my actual house key and unlocked the door in front of them, while Karen's so-called master key dangled uselessly in her grip. Inside, Leo sat at the kitchen table, math workbook open, pencil in hand. He looked every bit the picture of a kid calmly doing his homework, not the abandoned child Karen had described. The officers checked on him first, confirming he had food, water, and the ability to contact me at any time. Then I turned on the living room TV and pulled up the security footage. The screen showed Karen approaching the house, pulling out her mysterious key, and attempting to force entry while announcing her authority. The timestamp revealed she'd been at it for nearly 10 minutes before calling the police. The officers watched silently, their expressions tightening as the truth unfolded. And in that moment, I knew Karen's empire of self-declared authority was beginning to crack. Officer Thompson's question cut through the chaos like a blade. "Mrs. Whitfield, where exactly did you get the so-called master key?" For the first time that afternoon, Karen faltered. The smooth confidence that had carried her so far began to crack. She stammered about HOA protocols, emergency access, and safety measures. Then, in a slip that sealed her fate, she admitted she'd duplicated a key months earlier during a routine maintenance visit, without my knowledge or consent. The officers exchanged a knowing glance. Unauthorized key duplication was a line she could never talk her way out of. That was my cue. I retrieved the file I had been carefully compiling since the harassment began. I laid out on the table screenshots of Karen's invented HOA rules, timestamps and logs of her circling our house in her SUV, and neighbor testimonies describing her surveillance of Leo. The most damning piece came from Mrs. Rodriguez across the street, who had provided crystal-clear doorbell footage of Karen sitting in her car for 20 solid minutes, just watching our home. The shift in power was immediate. Officer Martinez's tone hardened as he turned to Karen. He reminded her, with icy precision, that making a false 911 report, claiming a child was abandoned and possibly injured, was a serious misuse of emergency services. Karen's voice, once booming with authority, shrank to nervous protests. Her eyes flicked to the small crowd of neighbors who had gathered under the guise of watering lawns or checking mail, though everyone knew they were there for the drama. Phones were out, cameras rolling. Karen's kingdom was collapsing in real time, in full view of her subjects. When Officer Thompson pressed her to produce the bylaws granting her the right to enter homes, she sputtered that they were at her house. He shut that excuse down immediately. No HOA agreement overrides state property laws or a homeowner's right to privacy, he said firmly. Then came the words I had been waiting for. "Ma'am, you are being cited for attempted unlawful entry and for making a false report to emergency services." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She babbled about responsibility, safety, her role as president. But the officers had already turned back to their paperwork. I calmly informed them that I would be pressing charges and that my attorney would be in contact. At the mention of an attorney, the color drained from Karen's face beneath her carefully applied makeup. The next HOA meeting was legendary. Word of Karen's attempted break-in and false police report had spread like wildfire. The community center was packed, standing room only, as neighbors who usually avoided these tedious meetings showed up to see justice served. I brought my attorney, Jacob Morrison, a specialist in HOA disputes who carried himself with quiet authority. He laid out our case methodically, like building blocks: the unauthorized key duplication, the attempted unlawful entry, the harassment, and the false emergency report. Each point drove Karen further into the ground. He also raised a chilling question: How many other unauthorized keys might she have made? The demand for a full audit of HOA key policies drew murmurs of agreement from the crowd. Karen's allies abandoned her one by one. Tom Bradley, the treasurer, revealed she had attempted to push through a motion for mandatory welfare checks without board approval. Sarah Kim, the secretary, produced minutes showing the board had explicitly voted against granting her authority to enter homes. By the time the vote of no confidence was called, the outcome was clear. It was unanimous. Even her most loyal supporters turned away. Karen shot to her feet, her chair screeching across the floor. "You'll regret this," she shouted, her voice shaking. "This neighborhood will fall apart without me." Then she stormed out, heels striking the tile like gunfire. Her downfall came swiftly. The false reporting charge alone carried a $5,000 fine. The unlawful entry charge, compounded by her deliberate act of duplicating a key, resulted in misdemeanor charges. Worst of all for her, the scandal drew the attention of the State Real Estate Board. Her precious license, the credential she flaunted at every opportunity, was suspended pending investigation. On the civil side, Jacob filed suit on our behalf, citing harassment and emotional distress to Leo. The court awarded us $15,000 in damages and legal fees. Karen was banned permanently from holding any HOA position, sentenced to 100 hours of community service, and served with a restraining order forbidding her from coming within 100 feet of our property. I'll never forget her face in court when the judge read the verdict. She stood there in her expensive suit, mascara running as tears streamed down her cheeks, her once unshakable posture crumbling. The bailiff calmly explained the terms of her probation while she swayed, as if the ground beneath her had been ripped away. The woman who had built her identity on control and intimidation was reduced to nothing, and all because, on a quiet October afternoon, she thought a fake master key could open a door that wasn't hers.